Any fans of the Ellen Show in the house? You know, we came across a clip from a segment in her show that is absolutely hilarious. It's called Apparently Confused, and it celebrates the difficulty many parents have in talking with their children in this post-telephone texting world. There's a lot of comedy to be found in that communication between parents and kids. Maybe you can relate to the challenge of deciphering a teenager's text. Or perhaps you have a little baby that coos and jabbers and you have no idea what they mean. Or maybe you're trying to understand your toddler's favorite TV show, Yo Gabba Gabba or Bubble Guppies. Seriously, if you don't have kids, those are real TV shows. But please don't watch them because you'll want to throw your TV out the window. But even if you don't have kids of your own, stay with me because today we're going to talk about some stuff that can be absolutely invaluable at any time in any relationship. Now, over the past few weeks, we've been in this series called Losing Your Marbles. And we've used this marble to represent 1 week in the life of a child. From the time a child is born until the time they turn 18, there are approximately 936 weeks. 936 formative weeks to invest our time in the kids we love. 936 weeks to impact the life of a child with our words. 936 weeks to help the kids we love find their place in the tribe we call church. But as important as time, words, and tribes may be, I would suggest that without love, none of those really matter. Without love, there would be no Elvis, Elton, Beatles, or Barry White, that's for sure. Without love, rock and roll would need a lot more guitar solos. Without love, country music would only be about beer and pickup trucks. Love is the best idea that ever came along. Love was God's idea. He is the master innovator, and He placed love into the very fabric of our being. Every person you've ever met was created to need love, designed to pursue love, and wired to connect in loving relationships. Truth is, love is at the very core of everything we are. You know, the Apostle Paul, who at one time seemed to know nothing but hate, penned some famous words about love after he met and chose to follow Jesus. And here's what he wrote. He said, "Now these three remain, faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is..." That's right, love. Love is most important. Love matters most. Everything else pales in comparison to love. So I think we can all agree that love matters. Love does matter. But today we're going to focus on the idea that the way we love matters too, especially the way we love kids. You see, the way you and I love kids can dramatically impact them for the rest of their lives. In fact, I would say that the way we love kids matters even more than the way we love adults. Because see, love is kind of like investing. See, a small amount early on in the life of a child, a small investment can yield great returns over the life of that child. And the sooner you start paying in, the greater the return. And the longer you wait, well, the less you earn. You see, kids, I believe, desperately need adults like you and me who will love them in a way that powerfully shapes their future. So the question is, how do we do that? I mean, what is the way kids need to be loved? Well, it kind of reminds me of a story about a married couple first. For their entire marriage, this man always gave his wife the heel of every loaf of bread. I mean, whether it was, sandwich, garlic bread, or just fresh bread out of the oven, he always gave her the heel. And she would wonder to herself, why can't I ever have the soft part of the bread? Why does he always keep the best part for himself? Well, after 40 years, she couldn't take it anymore. He serves her another sandwich with a heel on top, and she finally yells, "Why do you always do this? I like the soft part. I've eaten the heel all these years to make you happy. Why can't you ever take the heel to show me that you love me?" And the man just kind of softly replied, "Well, I always gave you the heel because it's my favorite part. I figured it was yours too." Well, in his letter to the church at Philippi, the Apostle Paul wrote some words that I think are super, super important. And he says this, he says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather," and don't miss this part, "in humility value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others." See, love always puts the other person's interests above our own. When it comes to love, we have to understand that every single person is unique. Every single person is unique. And the way you feel and receive love may be very different from the way I feel and receive love. There's no cookie-cutter, one-size-fits-all way to love. I mean, just because I love the heel of the loaf doesn't mean you feel loved if I give it to you, right? And putting your interests before my own is taking the time to discover that you like the soft part of the bread. So, what is the way kids need to be loved? Well, the answer is this: in the unique way each child feels loved. That's the way to love a kid. In the unique way each child feels loved. See, all of us love the kids in our lives, but it's not enough for that to be true, that we love them. It's critically important that we love them in a way that they feel loved. There was a very popular book written a while back called The 5 Love Languages. Maybe you've heard it. It's been a bestseller for years. It was originally written for marriage relationships and designed to bring greater understanding to how to best love your spouse. Well, since then, the content of the book has been adapted to other relationships, including a version I recently purchased called The 5 Love Languages of Children. And I love it because the authors break down the love languages for children, and they break it down this way. Physical touch. Physical touch is one way to express love to a child. That's one love language. You know, hugs and kisses. That may be one of the most common ways to express this love language. But there's other ways. You know, it might be, when a dad tosses his young son in the air, or when he spins his 7-year-old daughter around and around as she laughs wildly. Or maybe when a mom, snuggles up to read a story with her 3-year-old on her lap. All ways to express love through this language of physical touch. Now, these gestures might seem common, but studies indicate that many parents touch their children only when it's necessary, like, when they're getting them dressed in the morning, or putting them in the car, or carrying them to bed. Now, I know that some of us may not be the touchy-feely types, and this might not come natural, but again, see, it's not about what is natural to us. It's about putting the interests of the kids we love above our own. My daughter, Chloe, expresses love and feels love through physical touch. She's 14, still likes to sit on my lap, loves to hold my hand when we walk to the store, or just sit on the couch and watch TV, like right next to me, where there's no air between us. Why? Because physical touch is one way she feels love. Now, my son, Graham, not so much. I mean, even when he was very little, he didn't want to snuggle or hug at all. When Lisa, my wife, would try to cuddle up and sing to him at night before he would go to bed, he would put his hand up to her mouth and say, no, sing, Mama. I told her it's just because she couldn't carry a tune. But see, for some kids, physical touch is a great way to express love. For others, not so much. Physical touch, that's one love language. Another one is words of affirmation. Now, if you heard a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the power of words. Words that encourage, words that empower, words that exhort. Now, words of affirmation are words that say, I care about you. You matter to me. I admire the good I see in you. And such words nurture a child's sense of worth and security. And a child reaps the benefits of affirming words, for a lifetime. Chloe, my daughter, has always loved recognition and affirmation. Even when she was just like 2 or 3 years old, we would go to restaurants, and she was convinced that everyone there was there to see her. As we would walk in and out of a restaurant, it was like a parade to her. She'd wave and say hello and goodbye to everybody, and if they didn't respond, she would just say it louder. She'd start out by saying goodbye, and then it'd be goodbye. Honestly, until somebody would respond. She can thrive on a compliment or a word of affirmation for a long time. Sometimes I like to post her artwork on my Facebook page. She loves it. She's also pretty competitive and keeps track of the number of likes each artwork receives. But you see, for some kids, words of affirmation are a great way to show love to them. Maybe that's the best way to show love to a child you love. All right, the third love language is quality time. And quality time is focused, undivided attention time. Some children feel loved the most when they are given a block of intentional time. Quality time says, you are important. I want to spend time with you. And to the child, the most important factor in quality time is not the event itself, but the simple fact that you are together. One of the ways that I've tried to do this with my own kids is to have a regular date time with them. I honestly was a little more consistent when they were younger, but I still try to make this a habit. If you show up at Dunkin' Donuts on Thursday mornings in the city at the corner of Clark and Belden, there's a chance you'll find me and Chloe eating donuts, drinking chocolate milk and coffee before she takes the bus to school in the morning. Now, I got to tell you, I don't really remember any one of those times where, the conversation was so important that it immediately changed our lives. But you know what? There has been a lot of talk about school, friends, the future, God, family, soccer, ballet, church, boys, how to make a difference, grades. And sure, there's times it gets squeezed out or squeezed into the schedule, and it all feels very rushed. But you know what? I've never once walked away thinking, boy, that was a waste of time. There are all sorts of ways to love with quality time. It doesn't have to be at a restaurant. My wife, Lisa, likes to tell me, you don't have to spend money to spend time with the kids. And I tell her, I know, but we like donuts. You see, quality time, that might be the best way you can express love to a child in your life. All right, so the fourth love language then is gifts. Gifts can be a powerful expression of love at the time they are given. But the thing about gifts is that they often last much longer than the value of the gift itself. And the most meaningful gifts, they kind of become symbols of love. It had to be at least 10 years ago that I gave my daughter an I Love New York t-shirt. I was in New York City on some business, and I brought it back to her, and it probably didn't cost me more than, $5 or $10. But that t-shirt has carried incredible worth. She still has it. She actually sleeps with it under her pillow. She says it reminds her of me. And then she's speaking my love language. But it was just a simple gift that I think showed her that I was thinking of her and loved her even when I was gone. The fifth and final love language is acts of service. Now, if you're a parent, I think you know that the day you found out you would have a child, you enrolled for full-time service. Yep, your contract called for a minimum of 18 years of service with an understanding that you would be on active reserve for many years following. So there are some kids who feel loved through the ways we serve them. And it may be an act as simple as helping with homework or giving a ride to a friend's house. See, again, it's not the size of the task that matters, it's the thought behind the task that communicates love to that child. Acts of service. So those are the 5 love languages. You'll remember them? Physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, gifts, acts of service. As we think about what it looks like to love the kids God has placed in our lives, I would challenge us, learn their love languages. Discover the best way to express love to them so that they truly feel loved. And remember these words of wisdom. See, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests or how you feel and receive love, but each of you to the interests of the others, how they receive and feel loved. Well, today in our service, we provide a resource from the book I mentioned that can help you determine a child's love language. This particular resource is designed for kids ages 9 to 12. You can visit the website at 5lovelanguages.com to find other resources geared toward younger kids or older teens. But I would encourage you to take a look at that, because this week I want to encourage you to take a few minutes, sit down and talk through this test with the child you love. Because I believe it will open your eyes up and help you better love each kid in a way that ensures that they feel loved. And once we learn their love language, then we can direct our energy to loving the kids in our lives in the ways that fill them up. Throughout the love language book, the author uses an analogy called the love tank. And he says that inside every child is an emotional tank waiting to be filled with love. It's a little bit like, refueling a car's gas tank. All right, quick show of hands. Who here rarely lets their gas tank get below half of a tank before refilling? That's definitely me. Who here tends to wait until you're on fumes before you fill the tank up? Okay, I know some of you are like that too. Now, when I first learned to drive, the gas gauge on our tank did not work on our car. And so we had to keep track of how much gas was in our tank in other ways. I was 16 years old. How well do you think that worked? Not very good. You see, when it comes to our children, we got to pay attention, close attention to their love tank. Now, some of us might be more naturally in tune with this. Others of us not so much. Maybe you are in the mood where you're kind of feeling like the kid you love, his or her tank is running on fumes. But I want to encourage you. Don't lose heart. Don't give up, because there is still time. Starting this week, you can love the kids you love in ways that fill up their tank. I'll tell you what, let me take a minute to talk specifically to the parents in the room. I know the responsibility that you have is an enormous one. And most parents I know, they worry about whether or not they're doing a good job. A lot of parents think, God brings children into the world perfect and it's our job not to mess them up. And I get that. But here's the deal, parents. We will make colossal mistakes. We will likely have all sorts of relational miscues. We might fall on our face more times than we can count on. But you know what? If we speak our child's love language, I believe we can still succeed as a parent. You know, Peter was a follower of Jesus who made all sorts of massive relational miscues, colossal mistakes, messed up time and time again. But he wrote some of the most reassuring words you will find in all of Scripture. And he wrote this. He said, above all, love each other deeply. Why? Because love covers over a multitude of sins. Love covers a multitude of sins. See, if we get this love language thing right, I believe it has the ability to propel us beyond all of the challenges we might face. See, love has a way of providing stability and comfort even during the toughest of times. See, the greatest thing we can do for the kids in our lives is to simply love them. And beginning this week, if we love our kids the way they have been uniquely created to receive love, I'm telling you, the return over time will be incredible. Several years ago, I had the chance to spend a week with a guy who's sort of a mentor and leader that I respect a ton. A super influential guy, well-known author and speaker, admired by lots and lots of people. And it was fun just to have the chance to follow him around for a week. I really learned a lot. And you know, at one point in the week, we were at a gathering where he gave a talk. And before he spoke, a young boy, couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old, performed. And after the performance, this busy, influential leader who was just moments from speaking to hundreds of adults walked up to this boy, got down on his knees, looked him in the eye, and told him, "Thank you for sharing with us the incredible talent God has given you. That was beautiful." Just a few words. A seemingly insignificant act of love. But it was a picture I will never forget. And you see, I believe that in that brief moment, that man that I respect was loving that little guy in a way that that child would never forget.